Sinister Intent is a true crime channel that showcases crimes committed by some of the worst human beings on the planet. These stories are often told in graphic detail. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'd like to welcome you back to another video on the channel, Sinister Intent, in which we talk about true crime stories, the motives, 911 calls, the reflection of what it does to people that witness the crimes, so on and so forth, as well as what happens in the courtroom. Today we're going to talk about a case that not only shocked first responders, but also the whole city of Cincinnati, Ohio, as well as the media. Today we talk about the case of Deasia Watkins. And she was a mother with a troubled past. She dealt with mental illness and postpartum psychosis. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman right here killed her first child, only child, 3-month-old Deasia Watkins, in the most horrific way. Brace yourselves. I'm Steve, and this is Sinister Intent.
Get a little bit of gasoline. Welcome to another crime scene. Get a little bit of gasoline. Welcome to another crime scene.
Gruesome crime there involving a baby, and some of the details in this story are tough to hear.
A mother is charged with killing her 3-month-old child, and sources telling Not on Your Side the baby girl was actually found beheaded.
China, one emergency address of your emergency.
Somebody please send the police. My niece
Okay,
killed
ma'am.
her baby. Please.
What is the address?
5957 Wildwood.
Okay, ma'am.
Lord, help
Listen to
me.
me, listen to me. I need you to stop crying, okay? Stop crying. I need you to take a deep breath and tell me what happened. Hey, what do you see when you look at the child? What?
Look, lady, I don't want to describe the scene. The screen is very, very bad. All right, the little baby head is open,
Okay.
open. I'm not going in there to touch nothing because I don't want to mess nothing up. I'm not going in there to look because I already seen it.
You know, guys, when I do these videos, it's very hard to be empathetic to people that do some of the most vicious, heinous crimes, whether it's their own children or somebody else out there, whether they have mental illness or not. But a lot of times when you do these crimes, you really got to sit back and think. A lot of these people that do this, you know, the past dictates the future a lot of times. And a lot of times people are doomed as children coming up from a lot of stuff that they experience in their subconscious mind, leading to a lot of imperfections in their conscious mind. And I want to show you something about this girl right here, Deasia Watkins. She had a troubled childhood coming up and been introduced to the system since she was 3 years old.
Carol, this is the stack of court documents we received today. Deasia Watkins' childhood is spelled out in hundreds of pages from juvenile court going all the way back to 1998. These pages together paint a sad and troubled upbringing.
And found she's been involved in the court system since before grade school.
These juvenile court documents obtained by the I-Team Tuesday show Deasia Watkins was taken from the care of her mother in 1998 when she was only 3 years old. At the time, a social worker warned that Deasia was in danger of being neglected and abused by her parents.
The documents show Deasia's father wasn't involved in her life, and her mother had a history of depression and mental illness. According to records, Deasia's mother declined psychiatric evaluations and counseling. From the age of 3 to 15, Deasia bounced around between legal guardians.
All right, that's a little bit of the background of Deasia Watkins. And what wasn't mentioned is from the year 1989 to 2009, this girl at the time lived with 4 different families, family members or households. Within that time, in her court documents, of her earlier days, at age 11, guys, she showed signs of depression and abandonment issues. Now, when you have children, you want to have them come up in a place where they can grow and things like that. She has a history of mental illness, which you'll see later on in this video. But I mean, just to take a pause before we move forward, a lot goes in to children that are getting moved from pillar to post as far as their development. I think a lot of who you are, you know, what you go through makes you what you are in life. And at age 11, having abandonment issues and, you know, depression and not being able to figure that out at such a young age, or not having it being noticed by the people that are parenting you at that time, a lot of times it's a recipe for disaster. And it just makes me scratch my head and think that anybody even see what was going on, because, you know, a lot of times when people deal with stuff, they keep it internally until they can't keep it no more. That's a tremendous weight to have on somebody at age 11. Prior to the few months leading up to this, the occurrence of this crime, little was known about Deasia Watkins' adult, you know, life. But one thing's for sure is she did have a boyfriend whose name was James Brown. And both him and Deasia lived in an apartment and prior to the birth of the child. Now, when the child was born, right, Janiyah, she, everything was good until the first month. Well, after the first month, we started to see a change, or they started to see a change rather, in Deasia's behavior. Now, it's been proven that this woman suffered from postpartum psychosis, depression, and that's something not to be taken lightly. I don't know how it is to be a woman, to have a birth, and then, you know, birth a child, and then go through that type of situation. But it happens a lot. Though it may not be as extreme, the symptoms and stuff may not be extreme, leading to the extreme of what happened to Deasia Watkins' baby, you know, Janiyah. But it happens a lot, and it's something that needs to be paid attention to. Now, once they were in this house, right, you know, once they were in this apartment, everything seemed to be okay until a series of events would kick off with the beginning of January 25th, 2015, when a 911 call was placed in. The operators complaining about a woman screaming and a baby crying in the background at an apartment, and for people to come and send help. Guys, remember I told you about, you know, her troubled past and childhood, and her having issues of abandonment, you know, symptoms of, like, you know, someone that was abandonment issues. This is when it gets real crazy. Check this out. So neighbors hear all this commotion. They call 911. The police arrive. When the police arrive, they knock on the door. When they knock on the door, they can hear the baby in the background crying, and they hear Deasia saying she's not going to open the door. So what does the police do? They threaten to breach the residence. Hey, open the door, we're going to knock it down. So when they're about to knock the door down, they're met at the door. The door opens up, and it's James Brown's cousin, whose name is Chris Gully, right? And you'll see him later on in the video. Chris Gully opens the door. Now, when he opens the door, the police come into the residence. First thing they do is they say, okay, the house smells like weed. They note in their notes that the house was smelling like weed. As they come into a scene where the mother is holding little Janiyah, right? So she's holding her and she's acting erratically, right? So now Deasia got the baby in the arms. She got Janiyah, she's walking back and forth, mumbling all this other type of stuff. They try to calm everything down. They see something's off with her. They go to get the baby out of her arms. So they try to go over there and say, hey, let's get the baby. And, you know, we just talked this thing out. They say when they go to get the baby, right, Deasia attempts to choke the child. The child at this time is 7 weeks old, guys. So now a simple 911 welfare check then turned into a crisis situation. She's already shown that she's willing to hurt the baby. Police are stunned. They don't know what to do. So what they do is they come up with an elaborate plan. They say, hey, listen, EMTs are coming. They're going to perform a welfare check on both you and little Janiyah to make sure everything's okay. And we'll take it from there. When the EMTs come, right, they convince her, you know, to do checks on, you know, health checks to make sure both of them is all right. As they're doing these checks, they take the baby from Deasia, and Deasia passes out on the floor. She just falls out. Now, I don't understand what that's about, and it's never been, you know, talked about as why that happened. But I think personally it has a lot to do with the abandonment issues. And she felt as though if they took the baby, she would die or something like this. You know, her personally, she would die, I mean, and she just fainted. But either way, it was strange behavior for somebody that's, you know, just having a baby and like trying to, you know, when help is there to try to receive help. But either way, man, what happens is they wind up taking the baby, right? The EMTs wind up taking the baby and they take her and admit her to a hospital because they believe she's having a mental health episode, which she was. Now, Deasia was taken to Deaconess Hospital. Now, it's supposed to be a psychiatric hospital they have out there in Ohio. And during her time there, she was put on a 72-hour hold, in which the next day, guys, they came up with her diagnosis, and it was postpartum psychosis. So what they do, they prescribed her the drug Risperdal, which is an antipsychotic. And they gave her, you know, they told her, hey, you need to get some counseling. We advise you get some counseling. Because you're taking an antipsychotic, you can no longer breastfeed your baby temporarily. And everything seemed to be okay. They also had said she had marijuana in her system, which she still denies. You know, at that time, then she was in the hospital. They never used it. And yeah, it was in the house, but she didn't mess with it or anything like that. You know, I guess because it made her look like a bad mom, or she already thought they was going to take the kid from her. But either way, they subscribed her with Risperdal and said she couldn't breastfeed no more. But one thing I want to bring up, while they were talking to her and the caseworker was there, they told the caseworker that they doubted that she understood the severity of what, you know, the instructions they were giving her as far as, you know, the pills, the side effects, so on and so forth. And she didn't really grasp the magnitude of what she did and what got her in that hospital in the first place. So they had told the caseworker, you know, to be cautious of the situation because they don't think she's taking it as seriously as she should. On January 30th, 2015, just 5 days after the police interaction and that whole incident had happened, Deasia was allowed to come back to the apartment. But there was a safety plan in place already for little Janiyah, you know, for her safety, and it was as follows. She could have supervised visits with the baby, her baby, as long as, you know, the father, James, or his sister, Jaleesa, who's not pictured in this story, were present at all times. So that right there lets you know a little bit of the severity of what the police say they saw and how erratic Deasia was acting in this first police interaction that got her hospitalized in the first place. The second stipulation was this. All Deasia had to do was take her medication. Now, you remember in the psychiatric hospital where she was at, it seemed like she was dismissive of this whole situation. All they told her to do was have, you know, the child's father or his sister, the child's aunt, you know, Janiyah's aunt, present when you around the baby, and just take your medication. It was as simple as that. But things ain't always as easy as they're told to somebody. Short time after these stipulations was put into place, caseworkers were alerted via text message by Janiyah's father, James Brown, that Deasia wasn't even taking the medication. In fact, she never even filled the prescription out, y'all. And he was in fear that if she didn't comply to the caseworker, you know, terms as far as visitation and how she would deal with, you know, her child as that episode she had, he was in fear that they might take his baby away. So what he did was he went and told via text messages, told all the situations about what's going on. And he told her, hey, it's better for you, if you're not going to listen, that you can't stay here because I'm not going to have you in a position of harming our child. He advised her to leave. Guys, they said when he, you know, according to reports, when he told her she had to leave, she threw a fit. Kicking, screaming, acting a fool. I ain't got nowhere to go, so on and so forth. This is just the beginning, you know, of the downward spiral as far as Deasia Watkins and all of the gruesome things that would occur later on down the line. On February 6, 2016, the case worker that was assigned to this case made a surprise unannounced visit to the house where James Brown and Deasia Watkins was living. When the person came there, they could not verify if she took the medication. Now, prior to this February 6th visit, remember James told his girlfriend Deasia, you follow the protocol or you out of here, and she threw a fit. She told him, hey, I'm gonna get on board with it, I'm gonna do what I gotta do, and all of this other stuff, right? So he wound up letting her stay. I forgot to add that. Now, back to this February 6th visit. She couldn't verify that she even filled the prescription out because she didn't. So on top of that, it was later realized that James Brown did not fill out the birth certificate. So he was the birth father, but his name wasn't signed on the birth certificate. There was no name where the father's signature is supposed to be. And that's big because if something happens and the child is taken from Deasia, it'll also be taken from him, which subsequently happened because his name wasn't on the birth certificate. Now, later on, during the police interrogation, Deasia had said that the reason why his name wasn't on a birth certificate was because his ID expired. I don't know if that's true or not, especially coming from somebody that did what she did, but that's the story that's out there. I don't understand why he wouldn't have rectified that after 7 weeks of the child being around, and your first child, you want all the paperwork to be right. I don't know why, he didn't rectify that or some effort was made to fix that. But moving right along, they couldn't find out if she took the medication. Caused a big problem. Deasia, 2 weeks later, wound up moving out the house to her aunt's house. Now, what's crazy is, during that 2-week period, little Janiyah was taken out of the home and given to the aunt. The aunt said, hey, I'll take responsibility for the child, and little Janiyah can stay with me. 2 weeks later, during that 2 weeks, when they was trying to see if she had the medication or not, a beef brewed in the house to where Deasia moved out. And where did she move? With the same aunt where baby Janiyah was at. All right, guys, now what makes this upsetting is the state, didn't want to take the baby. They pulled the child out of the house, and the child was in state custody temporarily until Deborah Stewart agreed to take the baby in, which is an admirable thing. But this is where it gets kind of upsetting. She was given distinct instructions to where James and Deasia could not be in contact with the child. Now remember, James had the birth certificate issue, and they're worried about the safety of the child with Deasia. Even though she's the aunt, she was told specifically they cannot have contact with the child. Like I said, she decided she was going to let Deasia stay because during the interrogation, Ms. Stewart said, hey, I ain't got nowhere to go. Aunt Deb, please let me come. I ain't got nowhere to go. And that spurred her leaving out of the house to get closer to her child. Now, she goes, and lives there. She's there 3 days when the following happens.
Since 911, where's the address of your emergency?
Somebody please send the police. My niece killed her baby. Please.
What is the address?
5957 Wildwood.
Okay, ma'am.
Lord, help me.
Ma'am, who were you just you were just talking to somebody. Who were you just talking to?
My son, he came over here, he found that I was asleep. And he had his kids in to go to school because they go from my house. And he seen the baby on my, oh my God, help me.
Listen to me, I need you to stop crying, okay? Stop crying.
Oh
I need you to take a deep breath and tell me what happened.
All I know is my son came in here and woke me up and said, Mama, the baby's dead. Nobody knows. It happened sometime in the middle of the night.
Okay, what do you see when you look at the child?
Look, lady, I don't want to describe the scene. The screen is very, very bad. All right, the little baby head is open. Like,
Okay.
open. I'm not going in there to touch nothing because I don't want to mess nothing up. I'm not going in there to look because I already seen it. But it's very violent. It's a very violent scene.
Okay, guys, you heard the frantic 911 call describing the grisly scene. Now, you heard the aunt, Deborah Stewart, couldn't even talk. And you seen her son tell the lady, look, lady, I'm not going back in there. I'm not touching nothing. I seen what I can't unsee. I don't want to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? Now, for the record, guys, the baby was found on the kitchen counter, decapitated by a 5-year-old. One of Miss Stewart's, the son, one of his kids. That's something messed up, for, a mind of a 5-year-old to comprehend. When police arrived on the scene, they found Deasia under the covers with her hair sticking out, covered in blood, wrapped up. Quickly took her into custody, did a police interrogation where she acted as if she was listless, couldn't talk, didn't answer them, laid her head on the interrogation table. They took her to jail. 3 days later, they came back and they switched up their approach on how to talk to her. And even though she was, really playing in this mental illness thing, this time they got some answers out of her. And what she said she did to her own baby, Janiah Watkins, was shocking. Take a look.
I took Janiah, so I changed her diaper. He kept screaming and crying. And then I didn't get to change her, so I just threw her across the room. He didn't die, so I walked over there. I picked her up and banged her head and looked her 4 times. Then, after she was dying there, he clipped the big old stick and hit her in the head 4 times. She wasn't dying fast enough. Yeah, that's when I ran in the kitchen and killed her and ran her off. Took the next one out, stabbed her in her head, told her to die. Stabbed her in the eye. She was still touching. Just cut her neck.
How many times did you cut to get her neck severed?
Until it sliced off.
Once you started stabbing her, what made you think you needed to cut her head off after that?
She wouldn't die.
She wouldn't die? How do you know she wasn't dead?
Because she kept breathing and
She kept what?
breathing and moving around.
She kept breathing and moving around?
Yeah.
Even after you were stabbing her?
Yes.
What did you do with the knife after that?
Put it in her hand.
Was there a reason that you did that?
Yes.
Why did you put it in her hand?
So it looked like she did it.
So it would look like she did it?
Yes.
And then what did you do?
I went back around.
What made you do that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Do you regret what you did? Do you feel bad about what you did to Janiah?
No.
Why don't you feel bad?
Just
Do you blame Janiah for something?
no.
What made you want to kill her?
I don't know.
Do you think you could have just given her to James instead?
Yes. I get in contact with her.
Couldn't get in contact with him?
No.
James, how long before Robert showed up?
A good 15.
I'm sorry?
A good 15.
15 minutes?
Yes.
Did you hear the little kids scream when they came in?
They didn't even scream. The little girl said, the baby.
So you heard all that?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, guys, those are the grisly details that she said in the interrogation room. She had no remorse whatsoever for what she did. Now, from my standpoint of me looking at this, like you guys are looking at it, the way I looked at it like this. The baby was crying. In the beginning, when all this stuff started, she had that postpartum psychosis and depression and stuff like that. The crying was getting on her nerves, and she would act out by doing stuff to the child or wanting to do stuff with the child. If you go deeper into this case, The father spoke after, it was found out that she killed her own child, Janiyah. And he was speaking about Deasia, and he was saying stuff like, what happened the first time the police were called to the house. And his cousin, Mr. Gully, he was talking about it as well. This is what they said before I come back and tell you something.
And this is a hard thing for anyone, really, to understand.
A mother accused of beheading her infant daughter. One person struggling for answers tonight, of course, is the baby's father.
James Brown spoke tonight on Your Side reporter Jason Law about the shocking death of his little girl. Jason?
Janiyah's father told me this afternoon Deasia Watkins just wasn't the same after giving birth. Janiyah was born December 4th, and about a month later, James Brown said things began to change.
I'm lost. I'm lost right now.
James Brown says there were never any obvious threats. Deasia Watkins never talked to him about wanting to hurt their baby. But he said she was acting strange.
Did you ever try and talk to her? Did you ever try to, get her to see what was going on in her head?
I mean, we talked, but it wasn't. I didn't feel like it was her when she was talking to me at the time. Like, it was different. Like, the way she acted was different.
Brown believed Watkins needed help, but says she refused to take her medication. One warning sign came January 25th when officers were called to the couple's apartment. According to Cheviot police, Watkins was screaming at the child to stop crying. Chris Gully was there and told officers she'd been acting strange the last couple of weeks, talking in tongues and acting crazy.
She kept calling us like the devil and stuff like that. Like she kept saying we were sinning so much and we didn't realize we were sinning, that we need to come to the light.
Is there anything you'd want to say to her?
I mean, I want to figure out why would she do some stuff like this.
Hey guys, what you just seen was what transpired the first time the police were ever called to the house. Remember we said in December the police were called to the house. That first time, right? That's what happened. You heard the cousin. Seemed like James, the father, didn't really want to speak that much, and I understand he's upset and he didn't really want to give too many details, but the cousin was telling a lot. Hey, she was calling us demons, saying she was speaking in tongues and stuff like that, saying that we were sinners, we had to come to the light, and we sinning, we just don't know it, and all this other stuff, babbling, speaking in tongues. Come on. Because I was wondering, an instance like that, CPS come to take the baby, it got to be more than the story than what was just, described. And it was bigger than, a lot of people thought. And she was downplaying it because she was at the center of this whole thing, of all this craziness. So the reason why I brought that up and let you hear what he said, guys, is because it's a big debate on whether the aunt, Deborah Stewart, should have got arrested too for not going along with the caseworker's instructions after being granted temporary custody of young Janiyah. That's up in the air. And I mean, I can see yes and I can see no. Yes from a point of they told you the severity. I'm sure they did, to cover their own behinds with giving you the responsibility of raising this child. The no part is, what a lot of people don't know is, Miss Stewart is older. She's retired. She dealt with blindness, somewhat, partial blindness. She needed help with this child. A lot of times, people know, family members, Deasia asked to come over there. Hey, I ain't got nowhere to go. For all we know, Ms. Deborah at the time might be one of the family members anybody can go to in times of need. She might have downplayed the situation because she knows and feels sorry for the past that Deasia had, therefore let her come over there thinking, hey, she ain't gonna do nothing in my house. That's the way I looked at it, but either way, it was a recipe for disaster. And here he is, months down the line, a 3-month-old baby is dead and then died in a brutal fashion. You heard what she said she did? Oh, the baby was crying. I want to change her. Didn't get a chance to change her. Did you see the way she was talking? The fluctuation of her voice, the way she said it, like she was fed up, she was tired. It was just Janiyah being Janiyah. And I was tired of it. So basically you were tired of a baby being a baby. You were excited to be a mom when you first had the child, but the responsibility and the things that come with babies, crying, wetting themselves, and all that was too much for you to bear. And that's the thing. This girl, though she went through a troubled past and all of this other stuff, she had a chance to correct it with the new beginning of her new child with James, the father. That's the thing. And that's why I can't feel sorry for anybody in this situation, you know, that does stuff like this when you were presented with options and didn't take options. You can't feel sorry for somebody no matter what their diagnosis or anything is if they won't take the help that's given to them. This is unfortunate. That's a cute baby. And there are a lot of people that would have loved to take that baby. She would have had a better chance being adopted because she's a young child than a lot of other people that are in the system as teenagers, so on and so forth. She could have had a chance. That's the thing. A lot of people nowadays don't want to admit when they need help or when they're hurting or when something's wrong with them, especially when it comes to mental illness, because nobody wants to be seen as crazy, especially when they think they're in their right mind. This woman, ladies and gentlemen, subsequently sentenced to 15 years to life. And this is when she got sentenced. Take a look.
Nothing good could come out of this case, to be honest with you.
A mother pleaded guilty in the high-profile murder case of her own daughter, an emotional Deasia Watkins, now admitting to the 2015 killing of her 3-month-old daughter, Janiyah. 9 on Your Side reporter TJ Parker was in court this morning. He's live at the Hamilton County Courthouse with the details in today's hearing. TJ?
Well, Craig, her plea comes with a sentence of 15 years to life in prison. Today in court, both the prosecution and defense say this is one of the most horrific cases they've ever covered. Standing before Judge Charles Kubicki, 22-year-old mother Deasia Watkins pleaded guilty to murder. She was charged in the 2015 decapitation death of her 3-month-old daughter, Janiyah.
Regardless of what anybody say.
The coroner's report said the infant was stabbed many times.
This is one of the most grotesque crime scenes I've seen in the 30 years I've been an assistant prosecutor. It's an unbelievable act.
Watkins rejected a plea deal last November. She wanted to go to trial with an insanity plea. However, defense attorneys Norm Aubin and Perry Ancona say there were conflicting reports from doctors on whether she had a mental illness.
There was an enormous amount of evidence that demonstrated the defendant appreciated the wrongfulness of her conduct.
Her attorneys believed pleading guilty was in Watkins' best interest, a plea in which she would be eligible for parole. Ancona says in his many years as a lawyer, this case has been particularly tough.
It was very gruesome, a very emotional situation, emotional for the family that was here, emotional for her. It's just devastating.
Her sentencing date was March 8th, 2017. And in closing, I want to say this. It was just strange doing this case and see how she had an upbringing that was rough and was rescued from it from the same state agency that tried to rescue her child from her. But to no avail, the child lost his life, whereas she survived. And it seemed like history was repeating itself. Her mother had mental illness, father wasn't there. She had abandonment issues, dealt with depression at age 11, moving forward in life without no type of medication and counseling to oversee it, because maybe the people didn't see it. But I mean, her mental illness grew and grew and grew. And then when it was time for her to become a mother, she could only take it for about a month before everything went haywire. And that's the sad part. You know, being a parent, you know, part of you is sacrificing part of yourself to make sure your child grows and, you know, has a better tomorrow than you did. And a lot of people are not capable of that. And the situation with Deasia Watkins was just another one of these examples in these stories we do of people that can't get out of their own head. They offered her out, take the medication, you could see your baby. But for some odd reason, she felt as though she was smarter than everybody. And it wound up with her child dead and her behind bars, possibly for the rest of her life. I'm Steve. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Sinister Intent. Till next time, see you around.